Hi, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to our latest post, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to re-oil your oak chopping boards. It's a question I get asked quite a lot, and people tend to have the impression that looking after a solid oak board is quite a task, but in actual fact it's not. It's really easy, really straightforward. And in actual fact, the board will tell you when it needs some nourishment, when it needs some oiling. So I've got a couple of my boards here that I use very regularly in the kitchen. I've got a small one, which I tend to use for chopping things like salad vegetables, or cheese or fruit. And as you can see, this one's got a hole in the top corner. So actually, if I'm taking it to the table to serve, it makes a really good way. It's really great for actually getting hold of the board and sort of passing it around. It's also good for hanging up, so when the board's not actually in use, if I want to hang it out of the way, then that hole makes a great way to actually hang the board. So this one I have oiled recently, and the big board underneath it is in desperate need of some oiling, and you can probably see the difference in colour between the two, and that's what I mean by the board will tell you when it needs some nourishment and when it needs oiling. So it goes sort of very pale, it might start to feel a little bit rough, but certainly the colour will go pale, and that's when you know it's time to sort of pop some oil on it to give it a little bit of nourishment. So having done the smaller one, I will dispense with that, and we will do the larger one. So all you need to do this job is some oil, obviously, and a piece of kitchen paper, and I tend to use my hands, and I don't tend to wear gloves for this. Just make sure obviously that your hands are clean before you're actually going to go ahead and do it. The oil I'm going to use today for the video is white mineral oil, and that's the oil that we use for treating the boards before they're actually dispatched and sold. And we use white mineral oil because it has no taste, no smell and no additives. So anybody that has any allergies, i.e. a nut allergy for example, white mineral oil is suitable for those people with allergies. So that's why we tend to use that. But when I'm oiling my boards, what I tend to use is olive oil, because that's what I use in my kitchen. It's what I use to cook with, and it's what I use to make salad dressings with. So I don't tend to go into the workshop and get some mineral oil. I will just simply use my olive oil, which is in the kitchen. So you don't actually need to go and buy any special oil to look after your boards going forward. Just use whatever you cook with, whatever you would drizzle on your salad, and that's perfectly safe. The only thing to bear in mind is anything that has any sort of odour or any kind of taste, like olive oil, that will transfer to a very small extent onto the board. So remember that the oak is a porous material, and when you oil the board you will see that it will actually seep into the oak. So if you're using an oil that has a smell and has a taste, then because the timber will absorb the oil, naturally there is likely that it will absorb that taste and that smell, and therefore there is a chance of transference to food when you actually start using it. But as I say, I use olive oil when I'm cooking, I use it when I'm making salad dressings. So the fact that I might get a little bit of transference from the board to the food, for me, is not a problem. If it concerns you, then get yourself some white mineral oil. Okay, so what I'm going to do is drop a small amount of oil onto the board, probably a generous teaspoon is going to be enough to do the surface, might need a little bit more. And then all I'm going to do is spread it around the board, and you can see where the oil has come into contact with the oak, the colour is actually coming back. So just move it around. Try not to get your shirt sleeves in. Move it around onto the board. It's probably best the first time you do it just to drop a small amount on and repeat the process until you are comfortable with how much oil you actually need to do your board. So do the edges as well. Okay, so that has now taken on a completely different look, and you can see that the colour of the board is actually more uniform, whereas before I'd got a very distinct pale patch in the middle, which is clearly where I tend to have the vegetables when I'm chopping. So grab a piece of kitchen paper, and although I don't have any excess of oil on the board, I always like to just wipe the kitchen paper across the surface where I've oiled, just to make it an even coverage. Okay, so that's it, job done, very easy. What I would do with the board once it's been oiled is I would just literally stand it on its end and just let it dry. So when you're actually washing the boards or oiling them, I always recommend that you let the board air dry, so maximum surface area is exposed, so that you've obviously got more of an opportunity for the board to actually dry out thoroughly. So I always stand my boards on their end, so that when I've used them and wiped them down or washed them, they are actually drying naturally. And it's the same for me when the board has been re-oiled. Just stand it on its end, let it dry naturally, and it's good to go. So that's basically how to re-oil your oak chopping boards. Any questions, give me a shout. The instructions will be left on the blog, so if you need to sort of dib in, again, just search oiling, how to oil a chopping board, and you'll actually find it on the blog. Okay, have a great afternoon everybody. Bye for now.